London, 1800. When the sun went down, the city disappeared, not metaphorically, literally. The streets emptied, shops shuttered, houses locked their doors, and darkness swallowed everything. There were no streetlights, no electric signs, no glow from windows, just blackness, thick and complete. The kind of darkness that made you question whether the street you'd walked 1,000 times in daylight still existed at all. The moon helped when it was full and the sky was clear. But most nights there was nothing. You walked by memory, by touch, by counting your steps and hoping you didn't fall into a ditch or stumble over something in your path. Cities transformed after sunset. London, Paris, New York, all of them became different places, dangerous places, empty places. The same streets that bustled with thousands during the day held only shadows at night. Most people stayed home, locked inside. Candles were expensive. Oil lamps smoked and smelled. Families sat in semi-darkness, went to bed early and waited for dawn. If you had to go out, you carried a lantern. And you didn't go alone, because night belonged to those who moved through darkness by choice rather than necessity. Criminals, smugglers, people who understood that invisibility was power. The few who did venture out moved quickly, kept to main roads when possible, listened for footsteps. Every shadow could be a threat, every sound a warning. Night wasn't romantic, it was terrifying. There were watchmen in some cities, men hired to patrol with lanterns and call out the hours. Midnight, and all's well. Their voices echoed through empty streets, reassuring for those who heard them. But the watchmen were scattered, few and far between. Most streets saw no one. Darkness was absolute in ways we can barely imagine now. In a narrow alley between buildings, you couldn't see your hands 6 inches from your face. People walked into walls, fell into open cellars. Stepped in refuse they couldn't see until they felt it, and it was quiet, so quiet. No traffic sounds, no engines, no hum of electricity, just wind maybe, the occasional dog, the creak of a sign swinging, footsteps that might be yours or might belong to someone following you. Cities had rhythms dictated entirely by the sun. Work began at dawn, ended at dusk. Everything that required seeing, commerce, manufacturing, socializing, happened during daylight. Night was for sleeping, for hiding, for waiting. One traveller wrote in 1802, "London after dark is not a city at all. It is a void, a place that ceases to exist until morning." But all of that was about to change, because in workshops and laboratories across Europe, men were experimenting with something new, something that would transform night into a different kind of day. They were learning to burn light itself. The first experiments with gas lighting began in the late 1700s. William Murdoch, a Scottish engineer, discovered that heating coal produced a gas that could be piped and burned for light, brighter than candles, steadier than oil lamps, and once the pipes were installed, endlessly renewable. In 1807, London's Pall Mall became the first street lit by gaslight. 13 lamps, that's all. Just 13 iron posts with glass-enclosed flames burning at their tops, but they changed everything. People came from across the city to see them. They stood in crowds, staring upward at light that didn't flicker like candles or smoke like oil. Clean light, steady light, light that pushed back the darkness 10 feet in every direction. Some called it witchcraft, others called it a miracle. Most just stood and stared, unable to process what they were seeing. One observer wrote, "It is as if we have stolen fire from the heavens and tamed it inside glass. The darkness retreats before it like a living thing fleeing from pain." The light was different from anything they'd known, brighter than torches but softer than daylight. It cast long shadows that moved with the wind, creating strange patterns on cobblestones. And it had a color slightly blue-white, cold, almost spectral. It smelled too. Gas had an odor, slightly sweet, slightly acrid. It clung to clothes, drifted through windows, became the smell of night itself in cities where gas lines were installed. And it made sound, a soft hiss from each lamp, barely audible up close. But when dozens of lamps lined a street, the combined hiss created a constant background whisper, the sound of controlled burning, the sound of night being held at bay. Not everyone welcomed it. Some said it was unnatural, that humans were meant to sleep when darkness came, that extending the day with artificial light would lead to moral decay. Workers would spend their wages in taverns that stayed open late. Young people would wander unsupervised. Crime would find new opportunities. Others worried about safety. Gas was flammable, explosive if it leaked. Several early installations exploded, killing workers and bystanders. The technology was new, untested, dangerous. But the demand was overwhelming. Because gaslight didn't just illuminate streets, it illuminated possibility. By 1820, major thoroughfares in London had gaslight. By 1830, thousands of lamps. By 1850, entire districts glowed at night. Paris followed. New York, Berlin, every major city in Europe and America rushed to install gas lines. The transformation was staggering. Streets that had been empty after dusk now held people at midnight. Shops stayed open late. Theaters could run evening performances. Restaurants served dinner at hours that would have been impossible before. Night stopped being something to fear. It became something to use. The gaslight revolution had begun. Walking through a gaslit street for the first time must have felt like entering another world. The lamps stood every 30 feet or so, tall iron posts with ornate designs. At the top, a glass enclosure containing a single flame. Some burned brighter than others depending on gas pressure. Some flickered in the wind. But together, they created corridors of light through the darkness. The shadows were sharp, not the soft gradations of candlelight, but hard edges where light met dark. You could see clearly under each lamp, then step into dimness between them, then back into light. A rhythm of visibility and obscurity that didn't exist in natural darkness. Everything looked different under gaslight. Colors muted, blues and greens turned grey, reds darkened to brown. Only yellows and whites stayed bright. People's faces looked pale, almost ghostly. Their eyes cast shadows. Their movements seemed exaggerated in the alternating pools of light and dark. The streets came alive. Markets that once closed at dusk now operated until midnight. Vendors sold food, clothes, tools under the gaslight. Customers browsed, haggled, bought things they couldn't have bought before because they couldn't have seen them. Workers' schedules changed. Factories could run double shifts now. Morning shift, night shift. Productivity doubled. Wages increased for those willing to work after dark. The economy expanded into hours that had been lost before. Nightlife became a concept. Theaters thrived. Evening performances meant working people could attend after their shifts. The plays started at 8 or 9 and ran until midnight. Gaslight inside the theaters too, brighter than hundreds of candles, making the stage visible from every seat. Music halls opened, places where people gathered just to socialize, drink, listen to performers. They stayed open until 2 or 3 in the morning, something unthinkable a generation before. Restaurants served late dinners. Couples walked the lamplit streets afterward, promenading, being seen, participating in a social ritual that only existed because of light. Young people had freedom they'd never known, couldn't be tracked once they left home, could meet, talk, romance under the gaslight away from parental supervision. The lampposts became meeting points. Meet me at the third lamp past the square. The city's rhythm shifted. Instead of everyone waking and sleeping with the sun, schedules fragmented. Some worked days, some worked nights, some played while others worked. The city never fully slept anymore. There were always people moving through the gaslit streets, always activity, always light somewhere. But it wasn't all progress. Factory owners loved the extended hours, workers less so. Being able to work didn't mean wanting to work 16-hour days. The gaslight that enabled late shifts also enabled exploitation, exhaustion, accidents from fatigue. Children worked night shifts in textile mills under gaslight. their small fingers operating machines while adults slept. They walked home at dawn, passing the morning shift arriving, never seeing daylight except on Sundays. The light was liberating for some, enslaving for others. And the shadows behaved strangely under gaslight. They stretched and contracted as you moved between lamps, multiple shadows from multiple sources, overlapping, creating confusion about where things actually were. Objects looked closer or farther than they were. Distances became harder to judge. Some people loved it, others found it unsettling. A world lit by gas was neither day nor night, but something in between, a liminal space where normal rules seemed suspended. One writer described it. The gaslit street is a stage where everyone is performing without knowing their lines. That feeling of performance, of being seen, would fundamentally change how people behaved in public. Criminals hated gaslight. Before, darkness had been their ally. They could hide in it, work in it, disappear into it. A thief could snatch a purse and be gone before the victim even registered what happened. A footpad could wait in a dark alley and attack anyone who passed. Smugglers could move goods through streets no one could see to patrol. Gaslight ruined all of that. Now there were witnesses, people who saw your face, who could identify you later, police who patrolled lit streets and actually saw what was happening. Crime didn't disappear, but it changed. Thieves adapted. They worked in the shadows between lamps, moved quickly through lit areas, used fog, which London had plenty of, to their advantage. When fog rolled in, it swallowed the gaslight, reducing visibility to a few feet. Those nights, crime spiked. The old darkness returned temporarily. Some criminals turned the light itself into a tool. They'd loiter under a lamp, looking respectable, watch for targets, follow them into darker areas. The lamp became both cover and hunting ground. Pickpockets loved crowds in gaslit areas. Markets, theatre exits, busy intersections. Everyone distracted by the light and the activity. Easy to brush past someone, take their wallet, and disappear into the throng. But overall, street crime declined in lit areas. The statistics were clear. Gaslight made cities safer. Police forces evolved in response. Before, watchmen were scattered, ineffective. But with lit streets, organized policing became possible. Officers could patrol systematically, respond to visible problems. Citizens could see them and feel safe. London's Metropolitan Police, established in 1829, grew alongside gas lighting. The two technologies enabled each other. Police needed light to do their jobs. Light needed police to maintain order in the newly accessible night. The officers walked beats under the lamps, their uniforms visible from a distance, a deterrent just by being seen. They carried lanterns for checking dark corners and alleys where gaslight didn't reach, but the streets themselves were their workspace now. Crime moved to the edges, to districts without gas, to the poorest neighborhoods where installation was slowest. Darkness became a marker of poverty. If your street had no lamps, you lived in a forgotten place. The contrast was stark. Walk from a lit commercial district into a poor residential area, and the darkness swallowed you. The psychological shift was immediate. Safety to danger in the space of a single block. Fog changed everything. London was famous for it. Thick, yellow, choking fog that rolled off the Thames and filled the streets. Pea soupers, they called them, so dense you couldn't see 3 feet ahead. The gaslight became useless, or worse than useless. Each lamp created a glowing orb in the fog, but illuminated nothing around it. The light scattered, diffused, swallowed. You walked toward a lamp and only found it when you nearly collided with the post. Those nights, the city returned to its pre-gaslight state. People got lost on familiar streets, stumbled into the river, disappeared. Crime surged because criminals knew police couldn't patrol effectively. One fog in 1873 lasted 4 days. The gas lamps burned continuously but accomplished nothing. The city became a maze of glowing points in an impenetrable murk. Theaters closed. Markets shut down. Everyone who could stayed home. When it finally lifted, the streets were filthy, everything coated in a greasy yellow residue. The fog had mixed with coal smoke and gas fumes to create a toxic soup that clung to every surface. But on clear nights, gaslight transformed London into something almost magical. The Thames reflected the lamps on bridges, thousands of lights doubling in the water. Boats moved between them like shadows. The whole river glowed. Major streets became promenades: Regent Street, Oxford Street, the Strand. People walked just to experience being out at night, safely, visibly, together. The theatre district around Covent Garden blazed. Lamps every 10 feet, signs lit from within, people in evening dress moving between theatres and restaurants, carriages lined up, vendors selling programs and flowers. It was spectacle. It was modern. It was a glimpse of what cities could become. One foreign visitor wrote, "London at night is no longer English. It is something new entirely. A city of light that exists separately from the day version. I prefer it." That sentiment was common. Night London became fashionable, exotic, a place to see and be seen. The gaslight had created not just visibility, but culture. Something strange happened to people's minds under gaslight. Human beings had evolved to sleep when it got dark. Our circadian rhythms tied to sunrise and sunset. For thousands of years, that's how life worked. Night meant sleep, day meant waking. Gaslight broke that pattern. Suddenly you could work, socialize, shop, travel at any hour. Your body still wanted to sleep when darkness fell, but the city said otherwise. There was light. There was activity. There was no reason to stop. Sleep patterns fragmented. Some people adapted easily, working nights and sleeping days. Others struggled. Chronic exhaustion became common among factory workers on rotating shifts. Their bodies never knew when to rest. Doctors noticed an increase in nervous disorders, insomnia, anxiety, what they called neurasthenia, nervous exhaustion from modern life, the constant stimulation, the extended waking hours, the pressure to be productive at all times. But gaslight also created new freedoms. Romance changed entirely. Before, courtship happened under parental supervision in daylight, but under gaslight, young couples could walk together at night, partially hidden in the shadows between lamps, partially visible under them. It created a new kind of intimacy, public but private, seen but not fully. The gaslight was bright enough to be respectable, but dim enough to be romantic. Parks stayed open after dark. Couples walked through them, finding benches in the shadows. The lamps created pockets of light and darkness, zones of visibility and concealment. You could be alone together without being truly alone. Marriage rates changed. More people met without family introductions, chose partners based on personal attraction rather than arrangement. The freedom of gaslit streets enabled independence. Cultural life exploded. Opera houses, concert halls, galleries that held evening viewings, literary societies that met at night, discussion clubs, political gatherings, all made possible by light that let people gather safely after work. The middle class discovered leisure. Before, evenings meant going home. Now they meant going out, spending money on entertainment, participating in social life beyond the home. Fashion changed. Evening wear became a category. Clothes designed specifically to be seen under gaslight. Fabrics that looked dull in daylight shimmered under gas. Jewelry that caught and reflected the flame. Women's dresses with elaborate details that only became visible in the specific quality of gaslit illumination. Men wore formal black because it made them look sharper under gaslight. Crisp white shirts that glowed. Polished shoes that reflected the lamps. People learned to present themselves differently at night. Makeup that looked garish in daylight appeared natural under gas. Expressions that seemed exaggerated in the sun looked appropriate in the artificial glow. The gaslight created a performance culture. Everyone was slightly on stage, slightly visible, slightly performing a version of themselves for other people in the lit streets. Some found it liberating. You could be different at night, more bold, more social, the version of yourself that only existed under gaslight. Others found it exhausting. The constant visibility, the pressure to always be presentable, the sense that someone was always watching. Privacy became complicated. Your windows glowed at night if you had lights inside. People could see in. You could see into neighbors' homes. The boundary between public and private blurred. Some installed heavy curtains. Others embraced it, performing domesticity for passers-by, sitting in front windows, reading, sewing, being seen being respectable. The gaslit street became a shared social space in ways that had never existed before. Not quite public like a marketplace, not quite private like a home, something in between. A liminal zone where society invented new rules for behavior. One sociologist wrote in 1865, "The gaslight has made us all actors. We perform versions of ourselves for audiences we cannot quite see, but know are watching. And we watch others perform in return. The street has become theatre, and we are all both performers and audience." That was the deepest change. Not just that nights were lit, but that being seen became normal, expected, a part of everyday life. People started thinking about how they appeared to others constantly, what they wore, how they walked, who they were seen with. Reputation became visual in new ways. Gaslight created social surveillance, not by authorities, by everyone. People watched each other, judged, gossiped. The lit street made anonymity harder. In the old darkness, you could move unseen. Under gaslight, you were always potentially visible. That changed behavior, made people more careful, more concerned with appearances. But it also made communities stronger. Neighbors saw each other more, knew each other's routines, could tell when something was wrong. The lit streets created connection as well as surveillance. Children played outside longer. Games continued after sunset under the lamps. Neighborhoods became safer because people were around. The sense of community extended into hours that had been isolated before. Older people who had lived through the transition from darkness to gaslight often spoke about the psychological shift. How night stopped feeling like an ending and started feeling like a continuation. How time became more fluid. How the world felt bigger because you could access more of it. One elderly woman interviewed in 1880 said, "When I was young, the day ended, truly ended. When the sun set, that chapter closed and you waited for the next day to begin. But now time just flows, 1 hour into the next. The day never really ends. I'm not sure if that's wonderful or terrible, perhaps both." That ambiguity captured the era. Gaslight brought progress, freedom, safety, culture, but it also brought exhaustion, surveillance, the loss of natural rhythms. The streets that never slept were magnificent, but they demanded inhabitants who never fully rested either.